Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jake Rieger, and welcome back to part 3 of our Flask tutorial series, building a Reddit clone with Flask and Python. So we're going to get things started by adding Bootstrap 4, and then we're going to set up our registration route for users to sign up, and then we're just going to refactor some code. I thought about this. Originally, I was just going to write out our entire layout with CSS Grid, but I'm thinking it'll just be a lot easier and probably easier to follow if we just use Bootstrap. So you don't have to sit there and watch me write out a bunch of layout code, and we can just prototype this as quickly as possible. Alright, so let's get started. Open up your web browser here and head over to getbootstrap.com and find your way to the introduction page here. And you'll see you've got all the HTML tags to add the CSS and the JavaScript. So just go ahead and copy all of that into your template like so. As you can see, we still have our block head here and we still have our body head here. But we've also included some meta tags for Bootstrap, the Bootstrap CSS, and all the required JavaScript. And notice real quick that JavaScript, all the scripts have been imported underneath our body block inside of our body here instead of up here. And that's important. If you don't do that, none of it will work. So we have added Bootstrap. Wonderful. So let's head over to our index.html and just get rid of this link to our style sheet here. And we can go ahead and actually delete that static folder because we're not going to use it. And then we're good to go. So let's go ahead and just set up a basic Bootstrap container here just to make sure we're all good. I'll create an H1 and I will say welcome to Flask Reddit. And this is all just to make sure we have Bootstrap up and running. So make sure your environment is activated down here. If it's not, the command again is source. The name of your environment folder /bin/activate, just like that. Oh, and to deactivate, it's literally just deactivate, and that'll get you out of your environment. So I'm going to go ahead and re-enable that. We're going to run our app real quick, and we're going to go and open up in Chrome. So hold on, let me just refresh here, and there we go. Okay, welcome to Flask Reddit. It's in a nice big sans serif font. You can tell there's a big margin here, so we're inside our Bootstrap container, and it looks like Bootstrap is up and running. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the video here for now because I'm going to finish writing out all the HTML for our homepage, and then I'll come back and go over it. So I will be right back. Alright, so I'm back, and this is the design I came up with. Well, I shouldn't say came up with it because I literally just copied it from Reddit. But this is what I've got. What I decided to do is, since this is the focus of this tutorial series isn't on like HTML and CSS and how to write layouts and how to use Bootstrap and all of that. What I'm going to do is, if you want to use what I have here, what I've come up with here, I'm going to put this up on GitHub, and then you can clone the repo there, and then you can use this. But I'm not going to go over every bit of HTML and CSS that was involved here because it's just a lot, and it would quite frankly be a waste of time. So if you want to continue on with the series, just check out the GitHub link in the description, and you can go ahead and get this HTML to just toss into your project. If you want to write your own, that's fine too. If you know what you're doing and you can follow along and you just want to write your own template, that works as well. So I'm going to briefly go over what we have here, what I did, and then we will get into setting up our registration route. Alright, so here's the HTML. So I've got a nav bar, obviously. I wrote some custom CSS like here and here to just get it to look like Reddit, Reddit's bar or nav bar. Search bar in the middle, login, sign up button, and then just the name. Easy enough. The color scheme is pretty much straight from Reddit. this right here, this is kind of going to be like the what a post will look like on the website. This is just a card in Bootstrap that I did a little bit of, I don't know, custom layout work to. So you've got your upvotes here with the upvote and downvote buttons. They don't do anything yet. You've got your subreddit, and you've got the user that posted it with some info. All of this is just, I just typed this out. None of this is dynamic. None of this is coming from a database, obviously, because we don't have a database set up yet for our content. But just for the sake of demonstrating how it looks, I have everything just kind of hard-coded in there. These will all update dynamically when we have our database set up and hooked up to this card here. But for now, it's just whatever I had typed. Same with the actual content. None of this is coming from a database. Obviously, there's no comments, but I've got some buttons down here for share and comments. Those don't do anything, obviously, yet either. This card over here is literally just taken from the Reddit homepage right here. I wanted something to fill this space up, so I was like, we're building a Reddit clone. Let's just take something from Reddit. So here we go. This create post obviously doesn't do anything either, nor would it, because we're not even signed in. So yeah, that's the homepage that I managed to come up with. If you want to look at the code, I'll just go through this real quickly. So we've got the nav bar, then we go into container, set up some columns. We put our cards in the columns here, and then you can see all the content here has just been typed out. None of it's dynamic, none of it's coming from a database. But like I said, it's just there for the sake of looking at the layout, and that's it as far as the homepage goes. So let's set up our registration route. First things first, we're going to create a folder here, and we're just going to call this, we'll just call it authorization. You could call it registration, whatever you want to call it, doesn't really matter. This is just to keep our registration and our user account templates separate from everything else, so it's all nice and organized. So we're just going to create a reg.html. And then we're going to extend from our base.html. As long as your base template is in the root folder of templates, you never have to like use an actual path in here, no matter where your template is, because we're under the auth folder here. But if you had like 3 or 4 folders deep and you were still trying to inherit from this, you would still just have to type base.html. You don't have to use a full path. Ginger's smart enough to recognize that. So we're going to just go block head, our end block here, set up our title, Flask Reddit, sign up. Jesus, there we go. And then we need our body block. Like that, and there we go. All right, so let's go and create a route real quick. At app.route, and what is this going to be? Well, let's keep things simple and just make it /sign up. So we're going to do sign up as the name of our function here, and we're going to return a template. So return render underscore template, and this is going to be auth/reg.html. So here you do actually need to specify a folder. So let's go ahead and see if that worked. So we'll click sign up, and there we go. So we have a blank template here. I already had, I don't know if I covered this or not, but the login and sign up buttons are already set to go to. So this one goes to /login, which we haven't set up yet, obviously. And then sign up goes to /sign up, which we just created. So let's write some HTML. Perfect. So username, blah, 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 blah. And I believe I have to use like @gmail.com or... So there we go. So click sign up. Obviously nothing happens. So let's set up the action. And that's just going to be /sign up. It'll be the same route that we're on, and you'll see how that's going to work in a minute. And then the method, we want to post this data to our database. So real quick before we're done with the HTML, we need to do one more thing, and we need to set some name properties so that we know... Whoops, just fucking punched my mic there. So we know what we're referring to when we go to grab our form data in our Python code. So we'll call this username, we'll call this email, and we'll call this password. And we don't actually need the confirm password one. We just need username, email, password. Awesome. Okay, so that should do it for the HTML. Let's see if we click sign up. It says method not allowed. And that's exactly what we would expect, because right now our route isn't expecting a post request. We haven't set that up yet. By default, a route only is prepared to respond to a GET request, which is just when you load up the page and get the content from it. So we need to go to the add_app.route decorator here, and in the parentheses, we're going to do comma after the route, and then we're going to do methods equals and then brackets, and here's where we'll put the allowed methods for this route. So get, obviously, because if we don't have get, we can't view the page, and then we're going to do post. So now, if we were to click sign up, nothing happens, but we don't get that method not allowed error anymore. So let's go ahead and handle our sign up data now. We need to grab it from our form. We need to post it to our database, and we need to create a new user object with all of that information. And that'll be our sign up method pretty much. So let's go ahead and do if request.method equals post. And then we're not going to do anything quite yet with that. Again, if you're using the normal convention for importing Flask, you're going to need to import request. Same as before with like render template, but we are just importing everything, so we don't have to worry about that. So let's go ahead and handle our form data now. So we need to get our form data. So let's do underscore username equals, and how do we get our form data? How do we grab whatever the user puts in this box? How do we grab that over here? It's actually pretty simple. All it is request.form, and then in brackets that name you set on the name of, or that name you set on the component. So if we go over to input and we go to our username input, the name we set is just username. So that's what we're going to use here. And that's it. That's all you got to do. So let's go ahead and set up our email one. Same deal. We just called it email, so there we go. And then our password one. Password. All right. In my last tutorial, I believe I briefly mentioned that when we go to store our password in the database, we're not storing a plain text version of that password. What we're going to do is we're going to salt our password, and then we're going to hash our password, and we're going to store that. So what does that mean? So let's explain salting. What is salting? So let's say we have our password, and that is just password 1234. So this is our password. Actually, hold on. Can you disable autocorrect? Check spelling as you type. Correct spelling automatically. Smart quotes copies. Okay, awesome. I just needed to disable that real quick. That was kind of annoying me. Okay, so let's say that our password is just password1234. Salting is kind of what the name implies. We're going to sprinkle, basically, a hidden secret character that only we know throughout our password before we hash it. And this is going to be an algorithm, so it'll do the same thing every time. So let's say that our salting algorithm is for every 2 characters, insert a $sign. And this is actually going to be very similar to the hashing or the salting algorithm we'll actually end up writing. But what will this do? So let's go back to our password here, password1234. What's this going to do? For every 2 characters, insert a $sign. So P, first character, A, second character, $sign. S, first character, S, second character, $sign. W, first character, and so on. And it's just going to do this throughout the entire password. So this will be the final result. And then this isn't even what we're going to store in our database. We're not done yet. Next, we need to hash it. So what is hashing? Hashing is basically applying a cryptographic algorithm to whatever, in this case, a string. There's a bunch of different algorithms that exist. There's SHA-256, there's, what is there, MD5. I don't even know any others off the top of my head, but those are the 2 most popular ones I can think of. And these basically are going to take an input, and then they're going to spit out a unique output that looks random, but is completely unique to the input. So it will always return the same output for the same input. I know that sounds kind of confusing, but let me explain. Let me try to explain this a little bit better. So let's say that we have a function called SHA-256, which, as the name implies, would apply the SHA-256 hash algorithm to our input. And let's just say our input is this. Okay, so we're going to apply this algorithm to this string, and that will output something like, I don't even know, something just completely random like this. But this right here, this string, will always be the same for this input. If we were to change this $sign to a %, this would completely change. But if we were to put that $sign back, we would get this exact string again. So this is what we store in our database. So how do we verify that the password is correct when we log in if the user doesn't know this and they're just typing in their password? We just reverse the process, basically. So let's say user attempts login with password1234, our original password up there. So how do we handle this? So first, we'll take the password and we'll salt it again. So then we'll get this from the login. This will be the salted password from the password the user attempted to log in with. And then we'll look at our database and we'll just compare the hash of this to the hash of the stored password associated with the login username. So what's it going to do? It's going to compare the hash of our inputted password when we tried to log in, and it's going to compare the hash of this to the hash of the password we have stored in our database that's associated with the username we tried to log in with, basically. So I know it looks complicated. It's really not that complicated in practice. You'll see exactly how it works, and we're going to go ahead and set that up. Alright, so now that you've got kind of a basic understanding of how we're going to handle passwords, let's go ahead and set up our salting algorithm first. So we're going to make a new file here. We're just going to call this helperfunctions.py, because I kind of want to keep our salting algorithm separate from our main application here, and it'll just look cleaner anyway. So let's set up salt password. We'll set up a function here, and that'll just take an input of password just like that. Alright, so now let's lay out how we're going to salt passwords. It's going to be, like I said, it's pretty much just going to be this. For every 2 characters, insert something. But in our case, we're going to do for every 2 characters, insert, and we're going to insert multiple characters. So we'll insert a string. and we'll just insert, I don't know, let's do Bob. So for every 2 characters, we'll insert Bob. So let's create a variable here called iterations, because we're going to use a for loop for this. And we're going to do for character in password. Python's great. It'll automatically recognize that we're looking to iterate over each letter in the inputted string. We don't have to do anything fancy, just for car and password. And this can be whatever you want, but that's how I'm setting it up. The very first thing we want to do is we want to increase our iterations by 1. So right off the bat, we're on the first character, and we're telling Python we're on the first character. That's the first thing we're doing. So let's go ahead and create an array real quick. We'll call this password array, and this is just going to store the letters of our new salted password. So the first thing we need to do is just go ahead and append the current character that we're on. So we'll just append car like that. All right, so now we want to check to see if we're on the second character of this particular loop here, and we're going to check that like this: if iterations modulus 2 equals 0. So what does this mean? This means if the current iteration we're on is an even number, we'll go ahead and insert our salt here. So let's just go password array.append Bob. Just like that. So let's just see if this works real quick. So let's print salt password, and we'll use our example from earlier, password 1234. We're not returning anything. Return.join password array. Let's try that now. Okay, so there we go. You can see PA, first 2 characters, Bob, SS, Bob, WO, Bob, and so on. So this is our salted password right here. All right, so, you know, pretty straightforward. And there we go. There is our password salting algorithm. So we're going to go ahead and import that from helper functions, import salt password. So there we go. So let's go down here, and we're just going to do salted pass equals salt password underscore password. So there we go. Now we're salting the password that we sent from our sign up form, and we're saving that as a variable called salted pass. So now, if you remember here, salting is the first step, but now we need to hash it, and that's where from Flask underscore bcrypt import bcrypt, this library comes into play, Flask bcrypt. This was one of the first things we installed. It's right there. We need to set up our bcrypt object. So we're just going to do, let's see here, I don't know, bcrypt equals bcrypt app, like that. And now we can come down here and we can go hash pass equals bcrypt.generate password hash, and we're going to pass in our salted password there, just like that. So now we have a hashed password, and now we need to store all of this in our database. So we're going to set up a try statement right quick. So we'll do try, and we will do actually, yeah, we can do this under the try statement. We'll do here. We'll do new user equals, and if you remember, we have our user model here. So we're going to create a user, and then we're going to do username equals underscore username, and we'll do underscore email equals underscore email, and we'll do password equals hashed pass, like that. So that's our user object. So now we need to try to add this to our database. So it's db.session.add new underscore user, And then we want to commit this to our database, so db.commit or db.session.commit, and close our parentheses, and there we go. So if this doesn't end up working out, we'll just do a print statement here. There was an error creating your account, and then we'll do a redirect here, so return redirect, and we'll just redirect back to the home page if there was a problem. Otherwise, return redirect homepage. Actually, we don't even, we'll leave it like that. So what is all of this saying? So we're trying to create a new user with all of our information we grabbed from our form. We're going to attempt to add that to our database, then we're going to attempt to commit those changes. If this fails, we'll print out a little statement here to let us know, and we'll redirect back to the home page. Otherwise, we'll just redirect back to the home page. So let's see if this works. Actually, I don't need this terminal anymore. Python 3 app.py. So let's get this up and running. We'll go to our sign up form here. So let's put in some data. Let's say we're signing up as Jake. Our email is codingwithjake@gmail.com. Our password is password, like that. And let's sign up. So what happened? Let's check down here. Well, we didn't get, there was an error creating your account in our terminal here, so we can only assume that it created our account. So let's check out our database. And we'll go ahead and connect. Oh, you know what? I'm going to have to put all of this in again. And there we go. Let's check out user. And look at that. There we go. So we've got username is Jake. We've got our email in there. There we've got our hashed password. Tell it just looks like a bunch of random letters, numbers, and characters. And then we've got our date created. So yeah, that is user registration. There is one more thing I want to do in this tutorial before I call it, and that is just refactor some of our code here, namely this bit right here. I don't want to store our connection like this in our main app file just in a plain string like that, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a new file. And this file is going to be called config.py. And we're going to set up a class called config of type object. And we're going to do debug equals false, testing equals, testing equals false. And here we're going to set up our URL here. So let's do this. Where is it? It's right here. Create some variables here. So we'll call this db username, db password, db host, and db equals create some strings like that, and then let's just start copying all of these in. So there's our password, password, our host, and our database. And then we'll go and do this. And then dot format. And we want to pass in db underscore username, db underscore password, db host, and db, just like that. So there we go. We've kind of refactored how we're going about this, and we're gonna comment this out for now. Let's go, and we got to set up a couple more classes before we're done here. So class production config, and we'll pass in config. For now, we'll just set debug equals false, like it is up here. Actually, you know what? We don't actually have to do that because it's just going to inherit it. We'll just do pass for now because we're not going to worry about production configs yet. And then we'll do development config, pass in config here. And this is all good too. So we'll just do a pass like that. And that should be good. That should be all we need. So let's go back to our app here, and we'll do from app import, actually from config import development config, and then where we had our config before, we'll do app.config.from object, and then we can just pass in development config like that. So let's clear this out. Let's run this real quick. Make sure we're all good with the database. Let's sign up one more time. Let's just do test at test.test, test. Don't save. Redirects back to our home page. No errors. Let's check the database. And there we go. There's our test account. So we're going to go ahead and delete that row because we don't need it. But that's essentially how you would go about refactoring here. I just remembered I do want to set debug equal to true here. Wonderful. So that's a lot more code to type, but it's much cleaner, and it keeps things separate. Because like I said, I don't want this just sitting here in our main application. And when we want to run this as a production app, we can just import production config and change this to production config, and we're all good to go. So that has been a very long tutorial, a very long part 3, but we covered a lot. We set up Bootstrap, some styling. We've got our database, creating users now. We have our registration set up, all of that good stuff. Like I said, I will put the HTML templates up on GitHub if you want to get those, and I'll probably update those as the series moves on. In the next part 4, we're gonna cover logging in. Logging in is actually a little bit simpler, but we're gonna have to cover some new topics. So I didn't want to do all of that in here, otherwise this video would be way too long. But thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.